Aluxers, the poor man pays twice. It's not enough to just be poor. That would be easier to accept if you were paying for things according to your earnings, but that's not how it goes. When you're poor, everything costs more, and we'll explain how and why. Welcome to Alux.com, the place where future billionaires come to get inspired. If you're not subscribed yet, you're missing out. Number 1. Ignoring small expenses until they become massive bills when left too long. Aluxers, let's start off with an all-too-common scenario. You feel that your tooth is a little more sensitive than it should be, and you know it's due for a filling. But choosing between getting a filling or filling up your tank with gas is a no-brainer. The gas wins hands down. So you've got this nagging tooth. Fast forward a few months and your tooth is aching, your mouth is swollen, and you need a root canal surgery. Now the bill is 10 times the amount you would have paid if you had gone for the filling straight away. The same applies for car problems, healthcare, leaks, or any situation where preventative measures could ensure that a huge, unnecessary cost is avoided down the line. Rich people can fix problems right away. However, poor people don't have that luxury. Number 2. Getting to work costs more. In many cities, housing further away from the city center is more affordable. However, while you might save costs on rent or the purchase price of the property, getting to work will cost more. Owning a car is something that many poor people can't afford. There's fuel, insurance, wear and tear, services, and sometimes major repairs are needed. So, using public transport is often the only way to get around, and if you're poor and living far away from your job, getting there is going to cost more than someone who lives closer to their place of work. Public transportation can also be unreliable, causing a ripple effect. If you're late for work, you get a warning or you're not considered for promotions because you're thought to be as unreliable as your transport. Which brings us back to our main point. Being poor is also expensive. Number 3. Groceries and purchases cost more. There are a few factors to consider here. Without access to a vehicle, it's very difficult for poor people to take advantage of specials. Poor people can't hop in the car and drive from store to buy the TP at one spot, Clorox at another, and diapers on bargain at another store. It's just not possible. So poor people must make do with getting everything at one place regardless of the cost involved. Suppliers often drive up the price when they know there's a lack of resources to outsource the items at better prices. Here's an example. In South Africa, you can head to a place like Fruit and Veg City and purchase 2 cabbages for roughly $1. But those living in informal settlements need to pay around $2 just to get to a Fruit and Veg City, then buy their fruit and veggies and pay another $2 to get home again. The time it takes to walk to catch the public transport, then wait until it's full before it drives, then reverse, will add a few hours to a quick and easy task done by the wealthier. So they're forced to purchase a cabbage inside the informal settlement, and 1 cabbage will cost $2. Settlers know they can up the prices because people can't afford to get their food elsewhere. And here's where the next factor comes in. Because poor communities are in rural, hard-to-reach areas, the transport to get the goods there costs more, increasing the cost of supplies. So whichever way you look at it, the poor are paying more for basic necessities. Number 4. Poor people can't buy in bulk to take advantage of savings. So while we're at the store, let's talk about buying in bulk. After having a baby while struggling financially, a close friend shared her frustration. She couldn't afford to buy the diapers in bulk and was buying them in packs of 10 whenever a little money came in. She was paying triple the price for diapers because she couldn't afford the bulk diaper packages. Here's how buying in bulk saves you, taking her situation as an example. Buying diapers at Pampers, Swaddlers, or Target would cost around 25 cents per diaper. Buying them from Sam's works out to 21 cents a diaper. The savings doesn't seem like much at first, but it works out to roughly 12 diapers a day over 12 months, and that's $175 a year. And Aluxers, that's just for diapers. Now, what about when we add wet wipes, toilet paper, canned food, frozen foods, etc.? How much are we saving a year when we buy in bulk? A significant amount. Balance.com states some experts claim you can save around 20% when you buy in bulk, while others go as high as 83%. And again, we're back to our reality. Poor people don't have the cash flow to buy in bulk and therefore lose out on the potential savings. Number 5. Loans are taken to make it to month end. When you're poor, having enough cash flow to last you until the month's end is merely a dream, something that only happens to other people. And the only way many poor people can make their payments, and not even all of them, is taking a loan from a usually unscrupulous lender. These lenders charge exorbitant interest rates, which just builds up and the cycle becomes repetitive. Loaners are never able to fulfill their financial obligations and the debt keeps piling up. It's like taking one step forward and 5 steps back. Number 6. Late fee penalties. African-American writer James Baldwin once said, "Anyone who has struggled with poverty knows how extremely expensive it is to be poor." We've just mentioned how poor people live from check to check and how loans are taken just to survive until the end of the month. But even with a loan check, many monthly expenses will not be covered. Most debit orders and monthly subscription services will penalize you for not paying the fees on time. So again, debt just keeps accumulating when you're poor, and it's a very difficult hole to get yourself out of. Aluxers, we highly recommend listening to Hand to Mouth, Summary and Analysis of Linda Tirado's Hand to Mouth, The Truth About Being Poor in a Wealthy World on Audible.com. The summary answers the question, why do poor people do things that seem so self-destructive? Remember, if it's your first time using our code, you can get this one for free. Just head to Alux.com/freebook, and our friends at Audible will hook you up. Number 7. When you buy cheap things, they break earlier and you must buy them again. We completely understand it's one of those caught between a rock and a hard place sorts of situations. Poor people can only afford the cheap items, yet they don't last as long and need to be replaced sooner. However, forking out a huge sum of money to buy the quality or name brand item is not even a possibility when there are hungry mouths to feed. Sadly, items that are affordable for the poor are low end. They're cheap variants made from the worst components and ingredients and assembled with little care or concern for the buyer. Products are often defective, with the knowledge that the poor won't even bother returning it because it's just not worth the time or energy. Number 8. Banks favor rich people over poor people. Who is a more lucrative consumer for a financial institution? A poor person struggling to make ends meet, desperate for a loan, or a rich person that will bring more business into the bank? It's an obvious answer, so banks try to deter poor people from using their services, or rather, to look elsewhere. The poor must pay to bank, while the rich get paid to bank. Many banks require a minimum amount to be left in the account. If that minimum amount is not there, the bank charges you for keeping the account open. That's just one small example. Getting a loan is impossible when you don't have a good track record, and ultimately you're seen as a risk to the bank. Poor people also don't have substantial assets for lender liquidation. The late William Harold Grider, American journalist and author, once said, "The rich nations of the world are acting like ancient usurers, lending money to the desperate poor on terms that cannot possibly be met, and thus steadily acquiring more and more control over the lives and assets of the poor." Number 9. Eating nutritious food is unaffordable. Aluxers, in our video 10 Ways Poor People Think They Save Money, we spoke about junk food and why poor people gravitate toward buying it. We said the obvious reason is that it's cheaper, but the not-so-obvious reason, making fresh, healthy food from scratch, is time-consuming. Poor people are often working several jobs to make ends meet, trapped in a financial, mental, and emotional crisis that requires every ounce of energy to survive the day. So by the end of it, it's just a case of buying whatever is convenient. It's just not an option for poor people. The rich, on the other hand, can consume avocados to their heart's delight, buy their almond milk, and pop blueberries into their mouth like candy. Next up, a frightening fact affecting poor people in America. Number 10. Owning a home is impossible, and landlords take advantage of that. We all know how expensive it is to own a home. Besides needing a bank balance the size of Asia, you also need to jump through hoops to prove your income is steady and you are a secure, financially stable person. It's hard enough for middle-class people, let alone poor people. The alternative to buying a home is renting. Researchers Matthew Desmond and Nathan Wilmers discovered a frightening fact affecting poor people in America. They confirm that American landlords derive more profit from renters in low-income neighborhoods. They add that landlords exploit the poor and have, quote, staggeringly high profit margins. To conclude their findings, they confirm that, quote, poor people and especially the minority poor experience the highest rates of housing exploitation. If this is something that piqued your interest, we highly recommend listening to Evicted, Poverty and Profit in the American City by Matthew Desmond, read by Dion Graham, available on Audible.com. Number 11. Access to healthcare is more expensive for poorer people. Here's a simple equation for you. Money equals quality healthcare equals healthier and longer life. Okay, so what happens when you don't have money? Quality healthcare goes out the window and life expectancy, well, let's not go there. Healthcare inequality is a big problem, and studies have found that poor people are more likely to be ill. Causes are rooted in political, social, and economic injustices. Marginalized groups don't often have access to information that can prevent many illnesses, have limited access to decent hospitals, or doctors are not in close proximity. Medical expenses are too high. Poor living conditions means that germs or bacteria are more likely to spread, and often family members have to quit a job to take care of a sickly relative, losing an income for an already struggling family. If you ever drive past a low-cost healthcare facility, you'll also notice the long lines of people waiting to see a medical professional. You will never see that at doctors' offices that rich people have access to. Number 12. Poor people don't have time for investments. In Donald Glover's Atlanta and Why the Poor Stay Poor, a guy needs quick money and he wants to trade in his phone. A friend suggests trading up a few items until he gets a far greater return, and even though that's a good start on a micro scale, he can't afford that because he needs money right now. The friend is trying to do him a solid by showing him how with time he could make $6K by trading up his phone. However, like the poor guy says, see, I'm poor and poor people don't have time for investments because poor people are too busy trying not to be poor. The point was that often poor people must pass up on good long-term deals for short-term gains. It's a luxury they cannot afford and the reason why poor people remain poor. As Dutch-American abstract expressionist artist Willem de Kooning aptly said, the trouble with being poor is it takes up all your time. Number 13. Being poor leaves you with limited choices. Hey Luxers, being poor isn't just about not being able to afford shit. It also means having limited options available to you. Here's an example. A poor person finally scrapes together enough to buy a small car. So, with $250, how many cars is that poor person going to find? Not many, we assure you. And if they do find one or two options, neither are going to be pretty. Whereas a rich person can choose any car they want and not have to stress about paying off the monthly fees or the insurance. Next, how poor people easily lose their money. Number 14. The poor are easy prey for scammers. In our video, 15 Things You Should Not Spend Your Money On, we highlight the problems with these get-rich-quick schemes. And that's what they are, schemes. But when you're desperate and need to get out of a bad financial situation, poor people opt for these in the hopes they can turn the tables on their financial woes. As we said in that video, people are always looking at ways to make a quick buck, and there is so much noise online promising a great return on a small investment. To the untrained eye, it would seem like the opportunity of a lifetime, but sadly, they don't usually pan out the way you would hope. Number 15. Poor people are socially excluded. Aluxers, often our big breaks in life come from being in the right place at the right time. Someone you know put in a good word for you, and the next thing you're working the job of your dreams. Perhaps you've gone to a new trendy restaurant and you've bumped into an old friend that's doing really well, and Bob's your uncle. The following week you're on an expedition to the Congo to see the gorillas. Poor people don't have these random opportunities. They rarely get big breaks, and the only movement directly upwards is in an elevator. So Aluxers, if you're able to afford an opportunity to someone who is considered poor, do it. You could be breaking a poverty cycle for an entire family. So Aluxers, what do you think costs more when you're poor? We always value your input in the comments below. Now, as a thank you for sticking with us until the end and being a true Aluxer, here's our bonus for today. Being poor doesn't just cost a poor person in monetary terms, but it costs them so much more mentally. Living in constant fear of where the next meal will come from, should you answer your ringing phone, Maybe it's a potential job, or maybe it's a debt collector coming to get your soul because you have nothing left to give them. Hey Luxers, if this is you, be sure to follow our channel. We have some inspiring videos to help you out, and we want you to share your successes with us because we know you've got it in you. Until next time, we appreciate your likes, and don't forget to subscribe for more content every day.